I'm sorry I was detained downstairs, but I certainly want to thank Mayor Gray for coming this morning. With Metropolitan Police Chief Kathy Lanier out of town, I want to thank Assistant Chief of Police Alfred Durham for being here, as well as our friends from the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and DC Vote for being here on such short notice. We will need DC officials and residents to move immediately, taking all necessary steps to ensure that the district's gun safety laws remain intact, beginning, of course, this morning with hearing from top officials charged with public safety. I was at the White House yesterday on an unrelated matter. Soon after speaking on the floor against the gun amendment offered by Representative Thomas Massie, I spoke with a high-ranking White House official and asked him to begin working with the Senate to ensure that the amendment introduced by Representative Massie is not in the final legislation. In addition, the district's marijuana decriminalization law became final yesterday, only to be ensnared in a new fight to use the appropriation process to overturn it. Like the gun amendment, the marijuana decriminalization law introduced by Representative Andy Harris is attached to the DC appropriation bill that is part of the Financial Services and General Services Appropriations Bill. That bill also contains the annual anti-abortion amendment that stops the district from using local funds for abortion services for poor women, a rider we have eliminated once, only to have it returned annually. We believe both the gun amendment and the marijuana decriminalization amendment can and must be removed if Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and his colleagues adhere to their view that Congress, under the Home Rule Act, has devolved local lawmaking to the local DC government with explicit exceptions that do not include these riders. We appreciate the administration's statement of administration policy issued before the DC appropriation bill came to the floor and before the gun amendment had been offered on the floor, which says that the administration strongly opposes, those are its words, both the marijuana decriminalization and the abortion rider because they violate, here again are the administration's words, principle of states' rights and district home rule, end quote. Because of that strong principled rationale, we expect a similar position from the administration now that the gun amendment has been passed. Representative Thomas Massie is going to be able to go home to Kentucky and say, guess what I've just done for the people of Kentucky? I have passed an amendment that seeks to overturn the gun laws of the District of Columbia. We focused this morning on that gun amendment, offered and approved only yesterday because it presents a clear and present danger to our more than 600,000 residents as well as to the 20 million visitors who come to the nation's capital annually from all over the world, and the cabinet and federal officials who frequent our public places. The district's gun laws are under attack every year, but working here in the House, we've been able to keep the most serious from coming to the floor or to remove several in the Senate, even with an open rule on the DC appropriations, allowing amendments to a complicated gun safety law simply was inappropriate because it could not be appropriately framed. We were able to defeat Representative Massie's first attempt with a point of order, as well as, by the way, defeat another bill which did not return to the floor. But he returned and got through yesterday. Still, his amendment is fraught with unintended consequences and confusion, some of it laughable, that would make it almost impossible to enforce were it to survive. Unlike Representative Massie, more experienced House members have been trying to eliminate all the district's gun laws, but they have pending now a detailed bill, not a few-word appropriation rider. The pending gun bill that seeks to eliminate eliminate the city's gun laws, the full bill has not moved. Both the Massie amendment and the Harris marijuana amendment show why the appropriation bill, which is about funding existing programs, is an inappropriate vehicle to try to change or make new substantive law. Neither the Harris marijuana nor the Massie gun amendments would overturn any DC law. Instead, they block DC from using its local funds to enforce or amend its local laws. Trying to block or effectively amend existing laws through funding limitations creates unintended consequences and problems of interpretation. The city and I are still reviewing the implications of the Massie amendment, but it already seems that Representative Massie may have made some gun laws actually looser and some gun laws more restrictive. Representative Massie prohibits DC from using its local funds to enforce 4 DC post-Heller gun bills. And you will remember Heller as the Supreme Court's decision that made the district create its gun laws anew. Under one reading, Representative Massie has blocked the district as well as its police department from preventing people from carrying openly or concealed assault weapons with magazines here in the streets of Washington that can carry hundreds of bullets. Under another reading, DC may be left only with unconstitutional pre-Heller laws, which are legally unenforceable. Under a third reading, Massie has not only blocked the 4 laws from being enforced, he has also blocked the enforcement of laws these 4 laws amend. Can't be done with an appropriation bill. If you want to overturn our laws, there's only one way to do it in the Congress of the United States. You've got to introduce a bill, take that bill through the processes, and have enough people agree with you to get it done. In short, it is technically impossible to forthrightly overturn our complicated DC gun laws that have been meticulously enacted by the council after many hearings, weeks of back and forth, using only a few words in an appropriations rider. To clearly overturn our laws, it would take a bill as careful as the council's complicated laws enacted to meet the requirements of the Supreme Court's Heller decision. The council's gun laws have survived all 4 challenges thus far in the federal courts, which have upheld, for example, the district's registration law, its assault weapons ban, and I think there's even another one that's been upheld. We, of course, will argue that regardless of where one stands on DC's gun laws, on its face, the Massie Amendment is incapable of straightforward enforcement without inviting complicated litigation that could go on for many years. However, allowing an amendment intended to nullify the city's gun laws to get this far in Congress could not be more dangerous to the nation's capital. What Representative Massie apparently was trying to do was to keep the DC government, including the Metropolitan Police Department, from enforcing laws that permit the private sale of guns without background checks, the carrying of a gun openly or concealed on the streets of the Capitol, the purchase of guns with no waiting period, the purchase of an unlimited number of guns in one day, the possession of assault weapons, including 50 caliber sniper rifles, magazines holding up to an unlimited number of bullets. He was trying to do all of that with one amendment that consists of maybe 50 words. Making this big city, which is also the nation's capital, and a prime terrorist target, the most, or certainly one of the most, permissive gun jurisdictions in the country would be madness. The reasons for eliminating these riders in the final bill abound. We asked the President, Majority Leader Reid, and the Senate to choose any one of them, but do not let this gun amendment imperil our city and all who live or come here. I'm going to ask Mayor Gray to speak now.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I guess it's good afternoon now. First of all, I want to thank Congresswoman Norton and those who are here to support these efforts for your, and especially her, continued leadership on behalf of the 646,000 people who live in the District of Columbia, fighting for the autonomy and the rights that we deserve in the District of Columbia, like every other resident, every other citizen of the United States of America. And just to give some context to this, we're not a small, inconsequential jurisdiction. Apart from just being the nation's capital, we now have a population that is larger than the entire state of Vermont. We have a population that is larger than the entire state of Wyoming, and we're growing at the rate of 1,200 people net a month, and will soon probably overtake yet another state in terms of our population size. You know, I've started to feel, not cynical, but I've started to feel like Fannie Lou Hamer, the great civil rights activist. I'm actually sick and tired of being sick and tired of having to make these pilgrimages up to the Congress to prevent, to overcome treatment that I think is unfair, it is untenable, it is unconscionable, it is un-American, it is unneeded, and is unwanted, because we have the capability, and we've demonstrated again and again, to be able to manage our affairs in the District of Columbia. We're not a toy, we're not a pawn, and we deserve to be treated like Americans. It is incredible to me that those who advocate for the devolving of responsibility down to the local level would engage in the hypocrisy of then involving themselves of trying to micromanage and manage the affairs of the people of the District of Columbia. We are a city that is financially sound. When you look at our fund balance, we now have $1,750 million in the bank. We have had balanced budget after balanced budget after balanced budget. Economically, we are growing rapidly. You see cranes all across the city, the responsible growth and development of the city. Our education system is doing extremely well. We had some of the highest test scores in the nation that we found out about just in November and in December. And our public safety continues to improve every day. You'll hear some of that from Assistant Chief Durham shortly. But when you look at the statistics, violent crime is down this year, 13% overall, and robberies are down by comparison to the same period last year by 24%. So what this would have the effect of doing, and Congresswoman Norton has articulated that extremely well, would be to make this an incredibly permissive jurisdiction if this isn't overturned. One need only look back to the tragedy that occurred at the Navy Yard last September 16th, when someone with mental health challenges, someone brought a gun into the District of Columbia, went to the Navy Yard, and shot down and killed as many people as he possibly could. That gun was not purchased in the District of Columbia. That gun was not gotten from the District of Columbia. It came from a neighboring state in Virginia whose gun laws are far more permissive than the District of Columbia and doesn't have the level of background checks that we have. So it's shameful that we have to continue to fight off these incursions into our democracy in the District of Columbia. What we ought to be fighting for, frankly, is bringing real democracy to the 646,000 people who live in the District of Columbia. Frankly, we shouldn't have to come up here to ask permission to be able to implement our laws in the same fashion that every other legislative body does in the United States of America. We shouldn't have to come here to ask for permission to be able to spend our tax dollars. We raise over $6 billion a year in property taxes, in income taxes, and in sales taxes. And there's nowhere else in America, ladies and gentlemen, that would impose the will of Congress on people trying to make the decisions to be able to spend their own money. It's time for us to bring democracy to the District of Columbia. And this action that has been taken by Representative Massie really is a step backwards. And I hope that those enlightened folks here, those in the Senate, and the good friends that we have in the House of Representatives will continue to fight this battle so that we don't have this rider imposed upon us. So frankly, we don't have other riders imposed upon us, that the laws involving the legalization, if you will, of marijuana will be able to move forward in ways that they have in other states and, frankly, in the state of Maryland. So, again, I wish I were coming here to be able to sit down and talk to people about how we expand democracy for the 646,000 people in the District of Columbia. This is a step backwards, ladies and gentlemen. We need to stop it as soon as we possibly can, and then we need to go on with the business of bringing real democracy to the people of the District of Columbia.
Thank you. You've heard from the Chief Executive on whose first priority always is public safety. Now you hear from a man who is on the front lines of public safety, native Washingtonian, longtime member of our police department, Assistant Chief Alfred Durham.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. In using the words of Congresswoman Norton, a clear and present danger, and in the words of the Mayor, Gray, a step backwards. It is the mission of the Metropolitan Police Department to safeguard the residents and visitors of this great city. The bill the amendment that has been introduced creates a dilemma for us. One of the things the Mayor had mentioned was what happened just September 16th, to allow individuals to bring guns into the city, unlimited capacity, weapons, magazines, drums, and just to walk around. That puts our police officers, our public safety officials at a dilemma. It creates fear, it will create fear and havoc in the communities. It's no secret since 2001 that the District of Columbia has always been a target for both international terrorism and domestic terrorists. We can't have that. We have to ensure the safety and trust the safety and to safeguard the communities within this District of Columbia. As the Mayor had mentioned, crime in the District of Columbia has been decreasing for the last 6 years. Our homicide numbers were down. Our violent crime has significantly been decreased by the outstanding work of the men and women of law enforcement in this city. To allow folks to bring weapons, firearms in, and just walk around without any ability to do background checks is just ludicrous. Folks with mental health consumers, as well as those folks who are violent criminals, just to say you can have free reign to come into our city. Again, this is not good for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. Now, I'd like you to hear from some of our allies. We have allies from all over the country who assist us here and around the country. And I'd like to ask Brian Maltz from Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence to speak first.
Good afternoon. First, I want to thank Mayor Gray and Representative Norton for their champion of gun violence prevention issues and standing up strong for DC's gun laws. Thank you. The Brady campaign adamantly opposes any attempt by the federal government to tell residents of the District of Columbia what kind of gun laws they should have. We all know that DC's gun laws are the strongest in the country and that they are overwhelmingly supported by the people who live here. So what business is it of others to tell DC residents what to do? In a recent report by the Violence Policy Center, who analyzed gun death information from the Center for Disease Control, Kentucky has one of the highest gun death rates in the country. Kentucky's death rate per 100,000 people is 14.13, higher than the national average and higher than the District of Columbia. Let's just say that Kentucky's high gun death rate stems from their weak gun laws. In fact, Kentucky's gun laws are so weak, they get an F on our 2013 state scorecard that we produced along with the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. We would suggest that Representative Massie focus more on what he can do to decrease gun deaths in his own state that is suffering from high levels of gun violence and worry less about what the District of Columbia is doing. Now the legislation moves to the Senate. The Brady campaign and our network of 70 chapters across the country will be letting U.S. senators know that we oppose this dangerous amendment and that the Senate should block it. We stand with Representative Norton, the mayor, D.C. residents to protect their strong gun laws and keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. And we won't stop fighting until Congress gets the message to keep its hands off D.C.'s gun laws. Members of Congress should be listening to the will of the American people and passing important federal policies like expanding Brady background checks that are supported by 9 in 10 Americans. Sadly, many members still take their orders from the corporate gun lobby, as exemplified by yesterday's vote. We look forward to the day when Congress does the right thing and protects its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. We will shortly let you question the mayor and the police chief, but we have a couple of more brief remarks. Next by Josh Horowitz, from the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence.
Thank you, Representative Norton, Mayor Gray, Chief Durham. Thank you so much for working hard to make this city as safe as it can. I'm Josh Horowitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. The Coalition has been working for 40 years to protect the citizens of the District of Columbia, to protect our gun laws, and to make sure that people are safe and free from gun violence. Too many communities around the country, including this one, suffer from gun violence. We need to make sure that people can sit on their front porch in safety. The laws of the District of Columbia do that, along with the great policing of the Metropolitan Police Department. It is offensive that Mr. Massie from Kentucky thinks he knows best for the citizens of the District of Columbia. Not only does he want to abrogate the gun laws here, but his amendment is so poorly written that it's impossible to tell what it actually does, and returns the law back to what it was when the Supreme Court found it to be unconstitutional. How is that supposed to be enforced? How will that stay out of the courts? And what will that do to the training of law enforcement who have worked so hard to enact these new laws? There's a remedy for laws that people don't like in the District of Columbia. It's called the DC Council. They can go to the council and ask for changes. That's what people in democracy do, and that's what Mr. Massie is abrogating. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. This is not just a fight about the national government. This is a fight about the DC government. This is a fight that our organizations will take to the national level. People care about this on a national level, and will bring our resources of the entire gun violence prevention movement to protect DC's laws, because we cannot have the gun lobby writing laws for this country or for the District of Columbia. The residents of the District of Columbia deserve to decide their own gun laws in a democratic process, and that's what we've done before, and Mr. Massie's attempt to change that is an affront to the entire democratic enterprise of the United States of America.
Thank you, Josh. Finally, we want to hear from Kim Perry of DC Vote.
Good afternoon. I have to tell you that sitting here through the important remarks by our Congresswoman, our mayor, our police department, and seeing the face of Mr. Massie as he participated in this press conference has been quite sickening to me. Not only do I lead this incredible organization, DC Vote, but I'm also a mother, and I care about the kids in our city. And the amendment that Representative Massie has put forward is very dangerous to our local democracy and, of course, to our kids and our communities. I do want to say that our work at DC Vote is focused on gaining greater autonomy for the district. We've been working hard to build power by engaging people so that we can collectively change the law of the land and take control over our budget, our laws, ultimately secure representation in both chambers of the U.S. Congress. And the reason we're here today is exactly why this work is so absolutely urgent and important. You'd think that the passage of the 1973 Home Rule Act, that Congress would stay out of our affairs. You'd think that they would allow the local leaders that they authorized to take care of our local budget and our local policy priorities would be respected, but they don't, and they haven't been. The enormity of this interference this year and years in the past by conservative lawmakers is downright demeaning, offensive to us as citizens, and even hypocritical to their own local control principles. If these amendments are picked up by the Senate, they'd be crippling to our communities, as you've heard. Overturning our recent marijuana decriminalization law would further deepen the alarming racial disparities in arrests that we've identified that are holding our young people back. Eliminating our gun laws would essentially be a death sentence for young people and vulnerable residents of our communities. Continuing to restrict our ability to fund abortions and needed health care for our city's most vulnerable women is downright vicious. The results of these attacks are inhumane, and they give us every cause to fight back with vigor. We need to continue to make it clear to Mr. Massie, who's now left, and any other lawmaker that attack our local control that we won't stand by while they trample over our rights as Americans. Representative Harris in Maryland has now seen the anger and frustration of DC residents through the widespread boycott of his district. If he chooses to disrespect home rule, we choose to spend our hard-earned dollars at beaches elsewhere. Representative Massie and any others that trample on our rights will see similar actions coming their way. For any lawmaker within an earshot of this message, there's no better time than now to recommit yourselves to supporting bills that provide district residents with greater autonomy, with representation, because we deserve them as American citizens. If you do nothing, if you stand by and watch this chaos, you should know it's unacceptable and simply, I think, un-American. Thank you, Congresswoman Norton.
Well, we're open for questions. If you have any questions for any of the speakers, please feel free.
The law that has been opposed by Representative Harris of Maryland, there is a decriminalization law in Maryland.
The law had literally just been passed when I happened to be over there. And the official with whom I spoke was not even aware that the law had been passed. So he took that with some surprise and said, yes, we will get on it. Of course, the bill has got to go to the Senate. And as I've indicated, there are any number of reasons. Some people will simply be with us because they support self-government. Some people will be with us on the merits. But if for neither of those reasons you are with us, I think that as a technical matter, this amendment cannot responsibly remain in our appropriation bill.
I'd be happy to take him around the city. I wonder how many neighborhoods in the District of Columbia Congressman Harris has even been in. I'd be happy to conduct a tour around the city. But this was a press conference that was held by our Congresswoman, and I wanted to participate in that first. I'm sorry that he left. If he was still here, I'd be happy to walk out in the hall with him and engage him in conversation and regale him with the wonderful experience it is.
I would say that the crime is down because of the efforts of the Metropolitan Police Department, the good work, great work that the men and women are doing. There is no dispute that we want responsible gun ownership in, the District of Columbia, and through Heller, that is what we have.
Confident we never one, it's the whole world against the district. How could we not be doing it? Any other questions?
No, we have the research. I don't have that information with me today.
The drop in the crime rate and the homicide rate has anything to do with health?
No, I really don't. Not in the homicide rate, no.
Like I say, one reason why it doesn't have anything to do with Heller, so few residents of the District of Columbia have sought to own a gun and have gone through the process to do so. So far from being a rush for guns, we've seen a yawn because this city strongly opposes any but strong gun laws.
One thing he did say, though, was kind of interesting. He said that you all on the Democrat side did not want a roll call vote. Was this because you were concerned about the NRA?
Well, once the bill was introduced, once it got through the process, and remember, we stopped it once, and it was quite a humiliation, it seems to me, for Mr. Massie, because his side spent 20 minutes trying to tell him that there was a point of order on his bill. Now, point of order was from his majority, the speaker, the man in the speaker's chair, and still he persisted. And they finally couldn't do anything but let him, he then called for the speaker, his own speaker, to be overruled. That would have caused, by that time it was the evening, and people had dispersed because they were told there would be no more votes. If you try to overrule the speaker, everybody has to come in immediately for a vote. So that would have been another embarrassment because people would have had to come from Virginia and Maryland, wherever they had dispersed to. Finally, so what they did was to let him call for the chair to be overruled and then get a vote on it. He was the only one who voted for it. Then he went and tried to technically revive his bill. Now, let me make this absolutely clear. If you can get a gun amendment to the floor, it is going to pass because they have the majority. What is truly remarkable is that we got 4 Republicans who broke with their caucus and only 20 Democrats broke with us. We believed we would lose more Democrats. One thing we did not think was that a roll call vote, and we're very pleased with the vote, and I'll be pleased to tell you what the final vote was. Staff may have those numbers. We're very pleased with the final vote. But because we knew we were going to lose, and we did not lose many Democrats, and we gained some Republicans. So we had no illusion that we could win this once it squeaked through and was able to get a vote on the floor. We did not want a vote because we knew that it might be a difficult vote for some Democrats. Well, it turned out not to be nearly as difficult a vote as we thought because the Democrats we lost were mostly from very deep red states.
Congresswoman, beyond guns, beyond marijuana, beyond the TSA and the state of New Hampshire not recognizing driver's licenses, is this not a failure on the part of both city leaders and Democrats in the Democratic administration to make progress on home rule and get this monkey off your back? The mayor, Congresswoman.
Well, we confess we should have done more. Oh, Lord, I wish we had done more. I wish we could have convinced the House, which is controlled by Republicans, and I don't know what's wrong with you, Mayor, that somehow you haven't made them understand.
We're going to have the power to change these laws. If we had the power to be able to change these laws, you can be absolutely sure that they would have been changed long before now. We would have the ability to approve our own laws and never have to send them up here for the approval of the Congress. We would be able to approve our own budget without having to send our budget up here to be reviewed by people in most instances who have no clue about what goes on in the District of Columbia. We would have a vote for our Congresswoman. Imagine what she would be able to get done in addition to what she gets done if she had a vote. And yes, if we had the power to do it, we would be the 51st state of the United States of America. So,
shame on us,
yeah,
you're not.
yeah.
Are there any other questions, please?
Yes. Congresswoman, what's your reaction to having Mr. Massie show up here in the room for this event today?
Glad to have him here. I invited him to have a press conference. His Kentucky, one of his Kentucky television stations invited me to go on there and had an extended interview with them, and I think that's why he felt he had to come here. Yesterday, I went down to the radio and TV gallery, and I must have talked to them. They must have kept me there for 20, 25 minutes, asking very good questions with some background about this. This is a member who's been in Congress, I think he's a freshman, who came in a special election. If you look at his peers, and you compare him with his peers, he's introduced 10 bills. In that same period, I've introduced 6 times that many. He hasn't been taking care of the people of Kentucky. And he saw this chance, which was easy if you can get it to the House floor. And he took it. Unfortunately, he did not understand that technically it cannot be done. And that's one of the reasons I think that we can prevail. Yes?
Congresswoman, how concerned are you that this is going to wind up becoming law? Are you confident that you'll be able to turn it back?
Look, I am never confident. First of all, this shouldn't have gotten to the House floor. And remember, we have been able to keep these bills from coming to the House floor. And the reason I think this one hasn't been to the House floor is that, for example, the NRA, who was the power behind the gun amendment, which is really the very same as this, or the gun law, I'm sure that they are not behind this, because they know you can't do it with an appropriation law. Look, we are not only in the minority, we don't even, the member doesn't even have the vote. So for me to stand up here and say what I'm confident of would really be a fool's paradise. I'm not confident of anything. I'm not confident that the Senate is going to do the right thing. And it will only do the right thing if we get to work. One of the reasons that we had a press conference so soon is to alert our people so that we can get to work on the Senate. One of the reasons I talked to the White House when I had the opportunity is because we don't have any time to lose. The only thing that encourages me is that regardless of the underlying law, the Senate has tended to respect home rule and self-government. I can only hope that they will do so on these bills, particularly on the gun bill, which presents such great danger to the city. Any other questions?
Can you talk about why you think there's some Senate opposition to these laws? We've seen the opposition to the decriminalization and now this. So why do you think?
I'm sorry, did you say what? Can I tell you why what?
Why do you think there's all this opposition to these?
Well, I mean, why don't you ask those people? It's all ideological. It's people who simply disagree with us on the merits. The reason you have a United States of America is that we're free in these several states to have different laws. So why don't you go ask one of them? Mayor?
You know, if I can just add to that, Congresswoman is absolutely right. So much of this is ideological. It used to be that people, asserted that the District of Columbia was lawless. There was lawlessness that prevailed in the District of Columbia. It was a place where nobody wanted to live. Those assertions can't be made anymore. You look at the crime statistics, and they are substantially down. You look at the murder rate in the District of Columbia. It was going down even before the Heller decision came along. People are moving into the District of Columbia despite the fact that we don't have the same rights as other people in the nation. So it's now become ideological. The things that they can't do at home, they come and use the District of Columbia as a laboratory. If you look at the marijuana decriminalization law, the law that has been opposed by Representative Harris of Maryland. There is a decriminalization law in Maryland, so he didn't prevail there, so now he's going to come to the District of Columbia and use us as a laboratory for whatever his ideology may be. So what has changed is the continued assertion that the District of Columbia is a place where nobody wants to live. That is absolutely untrue, and now it's just become an ideological battle.
Mayor Gray, you sat out in the hallway for about 15 minutes while Representative Harris was inside here. Did you think about maybe engaging him, pulling him off to the side, and trying to? I'm just wondering why you didn't take that as an opportunity.
No, I don't know what the opportunity would have been. First of all, what he has done is unconscionable. That's what I said: unconscionable, unwanted, un-American, and unneeded in the city. And I'll be happy to talk to the Congressman Harris if he would like to talk to us. I'd be happy to take him around the city. I wonder how many neighborhoods of the District of Columbia Congressman Harris has even been in. I'd be happy to conduct a tour for him around the city. But this was a press conference that was convened by our Congresswoman, and I wanted to participate in that first. I'm sorry that he left. If he was still here, I'd be happy to walk out in the hall with him and engage him in conversation and regale him with the wonderful experience it is to live in the District of Columbia, except for the lack of democracy to which our people are subjected.
He's on his way back.
Good. I'll be happy to. You can stick around for it if you want, Mark.
Thank you.
How worried are you guys that this will actually go through? Obviously, I know there's the whole,
I just answered that question. We're always worried. That's why we have this press conference. Confident, we never are. We are. One, it's the whole world against the district. How could we not be worried? Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming.